The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 12 different worlds filled the curved chamber, their voices rising in confusion and anger. At the center of it all stood General Vextar, his green scales, darker than usual, his yellow eyes fixed on the speaker's platform. "Order! I demand order!" The council speaker's voice boomed through the translation systems. The noise slowly died down as beings took their seats. Some had tentacles, others had fur, and a few glowed with their own light. But all of them stared at the reptilian general who had called this emergency meeting. Vextar had fought in more wars than any living creature in the galaxy. His body showed the proof. Scars ran across his thick hide, and his left arm had been replaced with a mechanical limb after the Battle of Rigel. When General Vextar spoke, people listened. When he looked worried, governments paid attention. Today, he looked terrified. "Honored Council," Vextar began, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. "I come before you with an urgent request. We must immediately ban all human involvement. In galactic conflicts, the reaction was instant. Laughter erupted from several sections. Counselor Thyron of the Ethereal Collective, a being made of pure energy contained in a crystal shell, flickered with amusement. "General, surely you jest. These humans joined our community only 5 years ago. They barely understand our technology. Their weapons are primitive. Their ships move slowly. What possible threat could they represent?" More laughter filled the chamber. The human representative, Ambassador Park Jin-woo, sat quietly in his assigned seat. He was a small man by human standards, wearing a simple dark suit. He did not laugh. He did not speak. He simply watched with calm, dark eyes. Vextar waited for the noise to die down. His expression never changed. "3 months ago, I would have agreed with you, Counselor Thyron. I thought exactly as you do now. The humans seemed weak, soft, slow to learn our ways. I was wrong." The Mechanical Collective's representative, a chrome robot called Unit Prime, spoke in its electronic voice. "General Vextar, your military record is impressive. Your victories number in the hundreds, but humans have no such record. They have fought no galactic wars. They have proven nothing." "That," said Vextar quietly, "is where you are mistaken." He activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. Images appeared showing a star map of the contested region, where the hegemony had been fighting the Outer Rim Coalition. Red markers showed battle sites. The conflict had lasted 3 years with no clear winner. The war against the Coalition rebels seemed endless, Vextar explained. "We had superior numbers, better weapons, advanced tactics, yet every assault failed. Every defense held just long enough for them to escape. Both sides bled resources with no result. The conflict was stable, predictable, manageable." He touched a control, and the display changed. New markers appeared on the map, blue ones that moved in strange patterns. "Then we hired human mercenaries." The laughter had stopped. Every being in the chamber leaned forward, studying the display. The blue markers seemed to dance across the battlefield, appearing where they should not be, striking where enemies thought they were safe. Within 1 week, the humans had taken 3 rebel strongholds that had resisted us for months. Within 2 weeks, they had cut the main supply lines we could never reach. Within 3 months, Vextar paused, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. The war was over. Silence filled the great hall. Only the soft hum of the translation systems could be heard. Counselor Rethon of the aquatic worlds raised one webbed hand. "General, even if this is true, It proves the humans are effective allies. Why would we ban such useful soldiers? Vextar's eyes grew darker. Because they are not soldiers, counselor. Soldiers fight when ordered. Soldiers follow rules. Soldiers stop when victory is achieved. He activated another display. Humans do something else entirely. The new images showed aftermath footage from recent battles, smoking ruins of rebel bases, equipment scattered across landscapes. But what caught everyone's attention were the humans in the footage. They were not celebrating victory like normal soldiers might. They were not tired like beings who had fought hard battles should be. Instead, they moved with energy, with purpose, with something that made the alien observers uncomfortable. Watch. Their faces, Vextar said. Look at their expressions. The camera focused on a human soldier walking through the ruins. The being wore standard combat gear, but something was different about the way it moved. There was satisfaction there, yes, but also something else. Something that made primitive alarm bells ring in the minds of civilized species. They enjoyed it, Vextar said. Every moment of combat, every tactical challenge, every victory, they enjoyed it all. Ambassador Park Jin-woo finally stood up. His voice was calm and polite when he spoke. General Vexitar, I must object to this characterization. My people served with honor under your command. We followed orders. We achieved objectives. We conducted ourselves professionally. Yes, Vextar replied, turning to face the human directly. You did all of those things, but you also did them with pleasure. When my soldiers fight, they think of home, of peace, of the day when fighting ends, when humans fight. He paused, searching for words. When humans fight, they think of fighting. The chamber erupted in discussion again. Representatives whispered to their aides. Translators worked overtime as different species tried to understand what they were hearing. Counselor, Thyron's crystal form pulsed with different colors as she spoke. General, you are asking us to ban an entire species based on their effectiveness. This seems unreasonable. I am not finished, Vexitar said firmly. What I have told you so far is only the beginning. The humans I worked with were volunteers, citizen soldiers, beings who had other jobs and other lives. They were not even their species' best warriors. A chill seemed to fall over the chamber. I have since learned that humans have professional soldiers, beings who do nothing but study warfare. They have academies dedicated to military science. They have traditions of combat stretching back thousands of years. The ones who fought for me. Vextar's voice became very quiet. They were amateurs. Ambassador Park Jin-woo sat back down. For the first time since the session began, he smiled. It was a small, polite smile, but somehow it made the temperature in the room seem to drop several degrees. Furthermore, Vextar continued, word has spread. Other conflicts have begun requesting human assistance. The demand grows daily, and each time humans enter a war, that war ends quickly. But the humans do not seem tired by victory. They do not seek rest. They seek more conflicts. He turned off the displays and faced the council directly. Honored representatives, I have fought beside and against hundreds of species. I have seen every form of warfare our galaxy has produced, but I have never encountered anything like humans. They do not fight wars. They are war, given form and intelligence. The Great Hall was completely silent now. Even the translation system seemed muted. I ask you again, General Vexitar said. Ban human involvement in our conflicts, not because they are weak, but because they are too strong. Not because they fail, but because they succeed too well. Some weapons are too dangerous to use, even against one's enemies. The silence stretched on as the council considered his words and the implications of what they had heard. 3 months earlier, General Vextar stood in his command center staring at tactical displays that showed nothing but bad news. Red markers covered half the map, indicating rebel positions that seemed to grow stronger each day. The Outer Rim. Coalition had proven more resilient than anyone expected. "Sir?" Captain Zilak approached with a data pad in his clawed hands. The younger officer's blue skin showed stress patterns around his eyes. "The latest casualty reports from Sector 7. Vextar took the pad without looking at it. He had been reading casualty reports for 3 years. The numbers all blended together after a while. Thousands of lives lost in a war that seemed to have no end. "How many this time?" 217 dead, 430 wounded. The rebels have fortified the mining stations. Our assault teams cannot break through their defenses. The general set down the pad and rubbed his temples. Standard hegemony tactics called for careful planning, measured advances, and minimal casualties. These methods had worked well for centuries against civilized enemies who fought by similar rules. But the coalition rebels seemed to have different ideas about acceptable losses. "Sir," another voice interrupted his thoughts. Lieutenant Morgeth, his intelligence officer, had entered the command center. "I may have a solution to our manpower problem." Vextar looked up. Morgeth was young but clever, always finding new sources of information and new ways to solve problems. "What do you have in mind?" "Mercenaries, sir. There are several species willing to provide soldiers for payment." "We have tried mercenaries before," Captain Zilak pointed out. "The Korthak warriors were brave but undisciplined. The mechanical units were precise but inflexible. The ethereal forces were powerful but too expensive." Lieutenant Morgeth's skin patterns shifted to show excitement. "I am not talking about any of those, sir. I mean the humans." Both senior officers stared at him. Humans had joined the galactic community only 5 years ago, and most people still thought of them as newcomers who barely understood the basics of interstellar travel. "The humans?" Vextar asked. "What could they possibly offer? They have no experience with galactic warfare. Their technology is decades behind ours. Their ships are slow, and their weapons are primitive." "That is exactly why they are perfect, sir," Morgeth explained, pulling out his own data pad. "They are cheap, they are eager to prove themselves, and they are completely expendable. We can use them for basic duties, guarding supply convoys, holding defensive positions, clearing minor resistance. This frees up our regular forces for more important tasks." Captain Zilak nodded slowly. "It does make sense from a resource standpoint. Human soldiers cost 1/10 what Korthak mercenaries demand, and 1/100th what ethereal forces charge." Vextar considered the proposal. It was not elegant, but the war had gone on too long for elegant solutions. "Have you made contact with their military leaders?" "Yes, sir. They are very interested. In fact, they seem almost excited about the opportunity." "Excited?" That seems strange. Most species viewed war as a necessary evil, something to be endured rather than enjoyed. Their representative said they are honored to serve alongside the hegemony and eager to prove their worth on the galactic stage, Morgeth read from his notes. They can provide up to 5,000 volunteers within 2 weeks. Volunteers? Captain Zilak looked confused. Not conscripts or professional soldiers? Apparently humans have something they call citizen soldiers, beings who have regular jobs but also train for military service. They volunteer for combat duty when their government calls for it. Vextar shook his head. It sounded like a primitive system, but primitive did not necessarily mean ineffective. What do they want in return? Payment is standard galactic rates, but they also requested something unusual. They want their soldiers to be buried according to human customs if they die in battle. That seems reasonable, the general said. Most species had specific burial or disposal requirements for their dead. Anything else? They want permission for their soldiers to carry personal weapons alongside standard-issue equipment. Captain, Zilak frowned. Personal weapons? What kind of personal weapons? Lieutenant Morgeth consulted his pad. Knives, mostly. Some kind of bladed weapons they call bayonets. A few requested permission to bring what they call good luck charms. Knives? Vextar almost laughed. In an age of energy weapons and smart ammunition, humans wanted to carry knives. I suppose there is no harm in letting them keep their primitive blades. Meanwhile, on Earth's orbital military station, Colonel Lee Dong-Su stood before a packed briefing room. Human soldiers filled every seat, their faces showing the mix of nervousness and excitement that came with any new assignment. But this was not just any assignment. This was humanity's first major role in galactic warfare. Listen carefully. Colonel Lee began, his voice carrying easily through the room. We are being hired as support troops. The hegemony expects us to guard supply lines, hold defensive positions, and provide backup for their main forces. They think we are inexperienced and primitive. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Several soldiers exchanged glances. They are not wrong about our technology, the colonel continued. Our weapons are less advanced than theirs. Our armor is heavier and less protective. Our equipment is simpler. He paused and looked out over the assembled troops. But they have made one critical mistake in their assessment. Major Park Mina, sitting in the front row, raised her hand. What mistake is that, sir? Colonel Lee smiled. They assume that superior technology makes superior soldiers. They believe that advanced weapons create better warriors. They think that because they have been at peace for centuries, they have evolved beyond the need for basic military skills. The murmurs grew louder. Soldiers were beginning to understand what their commander meant. Humans have never known true peace, Colonel Lee said. While other species developed their technology and settled their differences through negotiations and treaties, we continued to fight. We have been perfecting the art of warfare for thousands of years. Every human child learns basic tactics through games. Every human adult understands strategy through sports and competitions. Every human soldier carries knowledge passed down through generations of conflict. Captain Song Yoon-ji stood up from the back of the room. Sir, what exactly are our orders? Follow. Hegemony commands, protect their supply lines, support their operations, learn their technology, and... The colonel's smile grew wider. Show them what human soldiers can accomplish when given the opportunity. The room erupted in cheers and applause. These men and women had trained their entire lives for combat, but they had never been tested against truly foreign enemies with truly different ways of fighting. This was their chance to prove that humanity deserved a place among the galactic powers. Staff Sergeant Kim Ha-jun raised his voice above the noise. Sir, do we have any intelligence about rebel tactics or capabilities? Some, Colonel Lee replied. But remember, the hegemony has been fighting this war for 3 years with limited success. Their methods are clearly not working. We may need to improvise. More laughter filled the room. Improvisation was something humans understood very well. One more thing, the colonel said, and the room grew quiet again. The other species will be watching us carefully. They want to see how humans perform in real combat. Some of them expect us to fail, others hope we will fail, but a few are curious about what we might accomplish. He looked around the room one more time. Let us make sure we give them something interesting to observe. The briefing ended with soldiers eager to begin their new mission. None of them realized they were about to change galactic warfare forever. The transport ships arrived at Kepler 442b during the early morning hours of the moon's 28-hour cycle. Colonel Lee Dong-soo watched through the viewport as his destination came into view, a gray, airless rock pocked with mining facilities and military installations. Smoke rose from several locations where recent battles had taken place. Not exactly a vacation spot, commented Major Park Mina, joining him at the window. No, the colonel agreed, but it will serve our purposes. The human contingent consisted of 2,000 volunteers, carefully selected from Earth's various military branches. They brought standard galactic equipment provided by the hegemony, but also carried personal items that had raised questions during inspection. Knives, small tools, books of poetry, musical instruments, and what humans called comfort items, things that helped soldiers remember home during long deployments. General Vextar waited at the landing platform as the humans disembarked. He watched with professional interest as they formed orderly lines and began unloading their equipment. They moved efficiently, but there was something different about their movements compared to other mercenary units he had worked with. Colonel Lee, Vextar greeted the human commander. Welcome to Kepler 442b. I trust your journey was comfortable? As comfortable as military transport ever is, General, Lee replied with a slight smile. My troops are ready for briefing and assignment. Excellent. Captain Zilak will show you to your quarters and provide tactical information about current rebel positions. I have assigned your unit to guard Convoy Route 7. It is a relatively quiet sector. Colonel Lee nodded. We appreciate the opportunity to serve, General. My soldiers are eager to begin operations. That afternoon, the humans received their first mission briefing. Captain Zilak stood before the assembled troops, using a holographic display to show supply routes through the contested territory. Convoy Route 7 carries medical supplies and ammunition to Forward Base Delta, the alien officer explained. Rebel attacks have been minimal in this sector. Your job is simple. Escort convoys safely from point to point. Engage hostiles. Only if directly attacked. Avoid unnecessary risks. Staff Sergeant Kim Ha-jun raised his hand. Sir, what kind of hostile forces should we expect? Small raiding parties mostly. 10 to 20 rebels with standard weapons. They prefer hit-and-run tactics rather than direct confrontation. Our regular forces have handled similar attacks with minimal difficulty. Lieutenant Choi So-ra asked, what about terrain advantages? Can we use the landscape for defensive positioning? Captain Zilek looked puzzled. The route follows established roads between secure installations. There should be no need for special positioning. Several human soldiers exchanged glances. Their training emphasized using every available advantage, including terrain, weather, and enemy psychology. But they remained silent and professional. The first convoy departed the next morning. 12 supply trucks moved slowly along the designated route, escorted by human soldiers in standard hegemony vehicles. The landscape was rocky and broken, with numerous hills and canyons that could conceal enemies. Sergeant First Class Yoon Jae-wook rode in the lead escort vehicle with Lieutenant Choi So-ra. Both of them studied the terrain carefully, noting potential ambush sites and escape routes. Their training made such observations automatic. This route is a tactical nightmare, Choi muttered. Too many places for enemies to hide, too many choke points, too few alternatives if something goes wrong. The hegemony has been using it for months without major problems, Yoon replied. Maybe the rebels are not very creative. 20 minutes. Later, they discovered how wrong that assumption was. The attack came at a narrow pass between two rocky hills, exactly where human tactical doctrine would have predicted. Energy bolts flashed down from concealed positions, striking the lead truck and causing it to crash sideways across the road. The convoy ground to a halt as drivers tried to figure out what was happening. "Ambush!" Lieutenant Choi's voice crackled over the communication system. "All units, we are under attack from elevated positions on both sides of the convoy." Standard hegemony procedure called for defensive formation and immediate requests for backup. The convoy would establish a perimeter and wait for reinforcements. While trying to identify enemy positions through systematic scanning, the humans did something completely different. "Hajun, take 3rd Squad and flank left," Lieutenant Choi ordered. "Sora's team goes right. I want those high positions neutralized in 10 minutes. Staff Sergeant Kim Ha-jun was already moving before the order finished. He led his soldiers away from the convoy, using the rocky terrain to approach the rebel positions from an unexpected direction. Instead of staying with the vehicles like other species would have done, the humans scattered into the landscape. Private First Class Nam. Kehoe found a position where he could see rebel fighters firing down at the convoy. His rifle was less advanced than standard galactic weapons, but his training was far superior to anything the rebels had encountered. 3 precise shots silenced an entire enemy squad. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Choi Sora led her team up the right side of the ambush site. She moved from rock to rock, using natural cover to avoid detection. When she reached firing range, her soldiers attacked with coordinated precision that caught the rebels completely off guard. But the most shocking moment came when Corporal Park Sung-min discovered that one of the supply trucks contained medical equipment. Instead of treating this as a logistical problem, he saw it as an opportunity. Within minutes, he had fashioned explosive devices from medical supplies and cleaning chemicals. "Improvised explosives ready," he reported calmly over the radio. "Improvised explosives?" Lieutenant Choi sounded surprised. "From what?" "Oxygen tanks and disinfectant mostly. Should be enough to clear that machine gun nest." The explosion that followed shook the entire canyon. When the smoke cleared, the rebel strong point had simply vanished. General Vextar received the after-action report 2 hours later. He read it 3 times before calling Captain Zilak into his office. "This report cannot be accurate," he said. "It claims the humans not only repelled the ambush, but captured 3 rebel positions that have been active for months." "I have confirmed the details personally, sir," Captain Zilak replied. "The humans did exactly what the report describes. They scattered into terrain our forces considered impassable, flanked positions we thought were secure, and used equipment in ways we never considered possible." Vextar studied the tactical display showing the ambush site. "How did they adapt so quickly to unfamiliar territory and unknown enemies?" "I asked Colonel Lee the same question, sir. His response was unusual." "What did he say?" Captain Zilak consulted his notes. "He said, 'We have been doing this longer than you think.'" The general frowned. "Doing what longer? They have no experience with galactic warfare." "I believe he meant warfare in general, sir, according to their historical records. Humans have been fighting continuous conflicts for their entire recorded history. They have never known extended peace." Vextar leaned back in his chair. Most galactic species had evolved beyond regular warfare centuries ago. Conflicts were handled by professional military units using established procedures and advanced technology. The idea of an entire species with continuous combat experience was difficult to comprehend. "What about casualties?" he asked. "None, sir. The humans suffered no deaths and only minor injuries. The rebels lost 43 fighters and abandoned positions they had held for over a year." "None?" Vextar stood up and walked to the window. "A force of primitive soldiers with basic equipment suffered no casualties while defeating an entrenched enemy. The humans do not appear to be as primitive as we assumed, sir." That evening, Colonel Lee met with his senior officers to review the day's action. The mood was professional but satisfied. "Good work today," he told his commanders. "But remember, this was just a probe. The rebels were testing us just as much as we were engaging them. They will adjust their tactics based on what they observed." Major Park Mina nodded. "Should we expect stronger resistance?" "Probably, but that is not necessarily a problem." Colonel Lee smiled. "We have been fighting stronger resistance our entire lives. Today was actually quite routine compared to some of our training exercises." The human officers laughed. None of them realized that their casual attitude toward combat was being recorded and analyzed by hegemony intelligence systems. None of them understood that their routine engagement had just redefined what galactic military leaders thought was possible, and none of them suspected that General Vextar was beginning to question whether hiring human mercenaries had been a wise decision after all. 2 weeks after the convoy ambush, General Vextar found himself assigning human troops to increasingly important missions. What had begun as simple guard duties had evolved into spearhead operations as the humans proved their capabilities again and again. "Sir," Lieutenant Morgeth entered the command center with yet another after-action report. "The humans have completed the assault on Mining Station Gamma." Vextar looked up from his strategic planning display. Mining Station Gamma had been a rebel stronghold for 8 months. Previous attacks by regular hegemony forces had failed with heavy casualties. Casualties? 3 humans wounded, none seriously. The entire rebel garrison surrendered after 4 hours of fighting. The general set down his stylus. "Surrendered?" "The rebels at Gamma had sworn to fight to the death. Apparently they changed their minds, sir." Lieutenant Morgeth consulted his pad. "The human commander, Major Hanbo Young, reported that enemy morale collapsed completely after the first hour of combat." "How is that possible? The rebels have shown fanatical determination against our forces." "The humans seem to have developed new tactics, sir. Psychological warfare methods that we have not seen before." Vextar activated his communication system. "Get me Sergeant Major Yoon Jae-wook. I want to understand what happened at Gamma." 20 minutes later, the human sergeant major stood in the general's office. He was a compact man with weathered features and calm eyes that seemed to take in every detail of his surroundings. "Sergeant Major," Vextar began, "I need you to explain how your forces convinced fanatical rebels to surrender without significant fighting." Yoon Jae-wook nodded. "Certainly, General. We used standard psychological pressure techniques combined with demonstration of superior capability." "Can you be more specific?" "We started by cutting their communications and isolating them from outside support. Then we demonstrated that their defensive positions were useless by taking out their automated weapons systems without being seen. After that, we let them know that resistance was pointless." Vextar frowned. "How did you let them know?" The sergeant major's expression remained neutral. "We left messages for them to find, written in their own language, placed where they would discover them during routine patrols. The messages explained exactly how we had infiltrated their defenses and what we could do to them if fighting continued. What kind of messages? Detailed descriptions of their daily routines, personal information about individual fighters, tactical analysis of their weaknesses. We wanted them to understand that we knew everything about their operations and could strike anywhere at any time. The general felt a chill run down his spine. How did you obtain such detailed intelligence about enemy personnel? We watched them, sir. Human soldiers are trained in observation and infiltration techniques. We spent 3 days studying their patterns before the actual assault began. 3 days. My reports show the operation lasted only 4 hours. Sergeant, Major Yoon smiled slightly. The fighting lasted 4 hours, General. The preparation took much longer. In human military doctrine, battles are won before the first shot is fired. After the sergeant major left, Vextar called his senior staff together for an emergency briefing. Captain Zilak, Lieutenant Morgeth, and several other officers gathered in the secure conference room. We need to discuss the human situation, the general began. Their performance has exceeded all expectations, but I am beginning to have concerns about their methods. Captain Zilak activated the briefing display. Sir, their effectiveness cannot be questioned. In 2 weeks, human forces have achieved objectives that our regular troops could not accomplish in months. That is exactly what worries me, Vextar replied. How are they achieving these results? Lieutenant Morgeth consulted his datapad. Analysis of their tactics shows several patterns. First, they conduct extensive reconnaissance before any operation. Second, they use psychological warfare to weaken enemy morale. Third, they improvise weapons and equipment far beyond standard specifications. Give me examples of this improvisation. Captain Song Yoon-ji has reverse-engineered captured rebel technology and improved its performance by 30%. Private First Class Nam Ki-ho has consistently achieved target accuracy, rates that exceed cybernetically enhanced snipers. Corporal Park Sung-min has created explosive devices from medical supplies, cleaning chemicals, and food packaging. Vextar stood and walked to the tactical display showing current rebel positions. What about their strategic planning? Major, Han Bo-young has predicted enemy movements with remarkable accuracy. Yes, sir. Her success rate in predicting rebel tactics is currently at 93%. How does she do it? Lieutenant Morgeth looked uncomfortable. She claims to use something she calls intuition, sir. When I asked for clarification, she said it was a combination of experience, pattern recognition, and what humans call gut feeling. Gut feeling? An emotional or instinctive response that helps guide decision-making. Apparently, it is common among human military leaders. Captain Zilak shook his head. How can emotional responses produce accurate tactical predictions? Military. Planning requires logic, analysis, and computational modeling. I asked Major Han the same question, Lieutenant Morgeth replied. She said that enemies are living beings, not mathematical equations. Understanding their psychology and motivations is more important than calculating their capabilities. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from Forward Base Delta. General Vextar, we have a situation requiring immediate attention. What is the nature of the situation? The rebels have begun specifically targeting human units. Sir, they are calling them the monsters from the Blue World and treating them as priority threats. Vextar exchanged glances with his staff. Are the humans in danger? Unknown, sir. The rebels have tripled their forces in sectors where humans are operating. They seem to consider human soldiers more dangerous than our regular troops. After the communication ended, the room fell silent. Finally, Captain Zillock spoke. "Sir, perhaps we should consider reassigning the humans to less critical duties. Why? If the rebels are targeting them specifically, we risk losing our most effective forces." Vextar thought about that for a moment. "Contact Colonel Lee. I want to discuss this development with him directly." An hour later, Colonel Lee Dong-Soo sat across from General Vexitar in the command center. The human officer listened calmly as the situation was explained. "So the rebels have identified my troops as special threats," Lee said. "That is actually quite flattering." "Colonel, this is a serious matter. Your soldiers may be in greater danger than other units." Lee shrugged. "General, with respect, my soldiers are always in danger. That is the nature of military service. The question is not whether we face threats, but how we respond to them. How do you plan to respond?" "We adapt, sir. If the rebels want to concentrate their forces against us, that creates opportunities for tactical advantage. Concentrated enemies are easier to target and defeat than scattered ones." Vextar studied the human commander's calm expression. "You sound almost pleased by this development." "In a way, I am. It means we have been effective enough to change enemy priorities. That suggests our tactics are working." "Colonel, do you understand what you are saying? The rebels now consider human soldiers to be their primary targets. They fear you more than they fear our advanced technology and superior numbers." Lee nodded. "Yes, sir. That seems about right." The casual way he said it made Vexitar's blood run cold. He was beginning to realize that humans viewed warfare in fundamentally different ways than other galactic species. That night, in their temporary barracks, the human soldiers gathered for their daily briefing. Colonel Lee stood before his troops, sharing the intelligence about increased rebel focus on human units. "They are calling us monsters," he told his soldiers. "They have decided we are more dangerous than hegemony regulars with superior weapons and equipment." Laughter filled the room. Several soldiers made jokes about the rebel reaction. "Sir," Staff Sergeant Kim Ha-jun called out, "does this mean we get hazard pay?" More laughter erupted. The casual attitude toward increased danger puzzled the hegemony observers who were monitoring the briefing. "It means," Colonel Lee replied with a smile, "that we are doing our job correctly. The enemy fears us. That fear will make them make mistakes, and when they make mistakes, we will be ready to take advantage." Major Park Mina raised her hand. "Sir, should we modify our tactics to account for increased enemy attention?" "We should modify our tactics because that is what good soldiers do," the colonel replied. "We adapt to changing circumstances and find new ways to accomplish our objectives. The fact that rebels are targeting us specifically just makes the tactical problem more interesting." The briefing ended with soldiers discussing new approaches to their missions. None of them seemed worried about being specifically targeted by enemy forces. Instead, they seemed energized by the challenge. General Vextar watched the recording of that briefing 3 times. Each viewing made him more uncomfortable. The humans were not just effective soldiers. They appeared to genuinely enjoy the intellectual challenge of warfare. That realization would keep him awake for many nights to come. In the days following the final battle, General Vextar found himself unable to focus on normal military duties. The image of human soldiers charging across a killing field while laughing kept replaying in his mind. He needed to understand what he had witnessed, so he began conducting interviews with individual human personnel. The first interview was with Dr. Shin Hye-jin, the chief medical officer for the human contingent. She was a small woman with gentle eyes and steady hands, the kind of person who seemed naturally suited to healing rather than warfare. "Doctor," Vextar began, "I have reviewed the medical reports from our recent battles. Human casualties included. Injuries that should have been immediately fatal to most species. Yes, General. Human physiology is quite resilient. We can continue functioning even with significant tissue damage. But that is not what puzzles me. According to these reports, soldiers continued fighting even after suffering wounds that should have caused unconsciousness from pain alone." Doctor Shin nodded as if this was perfectly normal. "Human pain tolerance is fairly high, especially during combat situations. Adrenaline and other stress hormones help suppress pain sensations temporarily." Dr. Private Nam Kiho continued accurate. "Sniper fire for 20 minutes after taking an energy blast to his shoulder that burned through muscle and bone. Yes, I treated that wound. It was quite serious, but not immediately life-threatening. Nam is a professional soldier. He knows how to work through pain." Vextar leaned forward. "Work through pain that would incapacitate beings from other species. General, every human learns to deal with pain from childhood. We get hurt, we treat the injury, and we continue with our activities. It is a basic survival skill." The casual way she described enduring agony as a basic skill made Vexatar's scales crawl. What about psychological effects? Surely seeing friends, wounded or killed, creates emotional trauma. Dr. Shin's expression grew more serious. "Of course. Humans form strong bonds with their comrades. Losing friends is always difficult, but we also understand that death is part of warfare. Soldiers train to accept that reality and continue functioning despite emotional stress. How do you train for such acceptance?" "Practice, mostly. We simulate combat situations repeatedly until appropriate responses become automatic. We also study military history extensively, learning from the experiences of previous generations." "How much military history does the average human soldier know?" Dr. Shin thought for a moment. "Most soldiers can discuss major battles from the past several hundred years. They understand tactical principles developed by famous commanders. They know stories of heroic actions and disastrous mistakes. This knowledge helps them make better decisions under pressure." After Dr. Shin left, Vextar called for combat engineer Lim Woo-jin. The human engineer had been responsible for many of the improvised weapons and tactical innovations that had proven so effective against rebel forces. "Engineer Lim," the general began, "I want to understand how you were able to create so many different weapons from basic supplies." The human smiled. "It is not really that complicated, General. Most human children learn to build things from whatever materials they can find. Engineering principles are fairly universal. Children learn to build weapons, not weapons specifically, but tools and devices for solving problems. The same principles apply whether you are building a toy or an explosive device." Vextar consulted his notes. "You created functional explosives from medical supplies, cleaning chemicals, food packaging, and maintenance equipment. Where did you learn such techniques?" "Military engineering training covers improvised munitions, but the basic knowledge comes from general education. Chemistry, physics, materials science. These are standard subjects in human schools." "Standard subjects? Every human learns about explosive chemistry?" Engineer Lim looked puzzled. "Not specifically about explosives, but about chemical reactions in general. Once you understand how different substances interact, you can predict what combinations might be useful for various purposes." "Various purposes including warfare?" "Among other things, yes. Humans are quite adaptable, General. We learn to use available resources for whatever objectives we need to accomplish. The next interview was with Captain An Ji-hoon, one of the tactical planners who had helped design the final assault strategy. Vextar wanted to understand the human approach to military planning. Captain, your tactical analysis of the final battle identified 17 different approaches to achieving victory. How did you develop so many alternatives? Captain An sat forward enthusiastically. That is one of the most interesting aspects of military planning, General. Every tactical situation offers multiple solutions. The key is analyzing all possibilities and choosing the approach that offers the best combination of effectiveness and acceptable risk. 17 approaches seems excessive for a single objective. Actually, we identified 23 potential approaches, but 6 of them would have resulted in unacceptable casualties among our own forces. Vextar felt his blood temperature drop. You considered options that would result in deaths among your own soldiers? Of course, sometimes tactical success requires significant sacrifice. The commander's job is to weigh potential gains against likely losses and choose appropriately. How do you determine what level of casualties is acceptable? Captain An's expression grew more serious. That depends on the importance of the objective and the consequences of failure. For critical missions, human commanders are prepared to accept very high casualty rates if necessary. How high? In extreme circumstances, complete unit sacrifice might be justified if it achieves essential strategic goals. The general stared at the human officer. You would order your soldiers to certain death. If the mission required it, yes, and they would obey such orders willingly, knowing that their sacrifice served a greater purpose. How can soldiers willingly accept certain death? Captain An shrugged. Honor, duty, commitment to their comrades and their cause. These things matter more than individual survival. That evening, Vextar met with Colonel Lee Dong-soo for a comprehensive discussion about human military culture. They sat in the general's private quarters, sharing what humans called coffee, a bitter stimulant drink that was becoming popular among the alien staff. Colonel, Vextar began, I have been interviewing your personnel about their backgrounds and training. What I have learned disturbs me. In what way, General? Your people seem to view warfare as natural, normal. They discuss combat techniques and battlefield casualties the way other species talk about routine work assignments. Colonel Lee nodded. That is accurate. Warfare is part of human nature. General, we have been fighting organized conflicts for thousands of years. Every aspect of our society has been shaped by military necessity at some point. But surely modern humans have moved beyond such primitive impulses. Have we? The colonel's smile was not entirely reassuring. General, human children play games that simulate combat. Human adults engage in competitive sports that mirror battlefield. Tactics. Human entertainment includes stories about war, conflict, and victory over enemies. Entertainment? We tell stories about great battles and heroic warriors. We write songs celebrating military victories. We create art honoring fallen soldiers. War is woven into our culture at every level. Vextar set down his coffee cup. Colonel, most civilized species outgrew such barbaric interests centuries ago. Perhaps. But those same civilized species struggle with conflicts that humans resolve, quickly and decisively. Your 3-year war with the rebels ended in 3 months after we arrived. Which approach is truly more civilized? Extended suffering or rapid resolution? The question made Vextar uncomfortable. But the cost. The cost of ending the war quickly was far lower than the cost of letting it continue indefinitely. Fewer total casualties, less destruction, faster return to peaceful conditions. That assumes peace is actually restored. What happens when your soldiers have no enemies to fight? Colonel Lee's expression grew thoughtful. That is an interesting question, General. Humans without external conflicts tend to create internal ones. We compete with each other. We explore dangerous territories. We challenge ourselves in various ways. We need adversity to feel fully alive. You need conflict. We thrive on it. Challenges make us stronger, smarter, more innovative. Peace is pleasant, but it does not bring out our best qualities. Vextar stood and walked to the window. Human soldiers were visible in the compound below, engaged in various activities. Even their recreational pursuits seemed to involve competition and physical challenge. Colonel, I must ask you directly. Do your people enjoy killing? The human officer was quiet for a long moment before responding. Some do, General. Most humans find satisfaction in victory rather than in killing specifically. But yes, there are those among us who take pleasure in combat itself, including its lethal aspects. How do you control such individuals? We channel their abilities toward appropriate targets. Soldiers like that become our most effective special operations personnel. They serve useful purposes when properly directed. And if they cannot be properly directed, Colonel Lee's expression grew cold. Then they become problems that must be solved through other means. Humans are quite good at news of the human victory spread through galactic communication networks faster than anyone expected. Within days, military commanders across 12 sectors were analyzing battle reports and trying to understand how a primitive species had accomplished what advanced civilizations could not. General Vextar received his first indication of how the news was being received when Captain Zilak burst into his office carrying an urgent message pad. Sir, we have received 17 requests for human mercenary services in the past 6 hours. 17? Vextar looked up from his paperwork. From whom? The Centaurian Federation is offering their entire mineral wealth for human protection against the Vegan expansion. The aquatic worlds want human soldiers to end their border dispute with the Crystal Collective. Even the Mechanical Unity is requesting human tactical advisors. Vextar studied the message pad. The requests all shared similar language. Desperate pleas for quick resolution of conflicts that had been ongoing for months or years. What about the coalition rebels? Any word from their surviving leadership? Captain Zilak's skin showed nervous patterns. They have issued a galaxy-wide warning, sir. They claim humans are a dangerous species that should be avoided by all civilized beings. A warning? What kind of warning? They are calling humans the Deathbringers from the Blue World and advising other resistance movements to surrender rather than face human forces. Lieutenant Morgeth entered the office carrying additional reports. Sir, we are also receiving intelligence about changes in several ongoing conflicts. 3 different wars have ended with one side surrendering. Immediately after hearing rumors that humans might be deployed against them, Vextar set down his stylus. Ended? Without any human involvement? Correct, sir. The mere possibility of facing human soldiers was enough to convince them that continued fighting was pointless. The implications of this development were staggering. Human reputation alone was ending conflicts that had resisted diplomatic solution for years. Have there been any direct requests to speak with human personnel? Lieutenant Morgeth consulted his pad. Yes, sir. The Philosophical Collective has requested a private meeting with Colonel Lee. They claim it involves a matter of galactic security. 2 days later, Ambassador Ryu Haiwan of Earth's Diplomatic Corps arrived at the base for what was supposed to be a routine consultation about human involvement in galactic affairs. Instead, she found herself in a meeting that would change her understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. The meeting took place in a secure conference room with representatives from several species. The philosophical collective had sent their most senior ambassador, a being of pure thought who communicated through complex light patterns. The ethereal representatives flickered with nervous energy. Even the normally confident mechanical unity sent their most advanced diplomatic unit. Ambassador Ryu, the philosophical collective representative, began. We must discuss a matter of extreme delicacy concerning your species' military capabilities. I am happy to address any concerns, Ambassador Ryu replied diplomatically. Our concern is not about what humans have done, but about what they might do. The recent victory over the coalition rebels has created ripple effects throughout the galaxy. The ethereal representative pulsed with agitated colors. 3 separate conflicts have ended because one side feared human intervention. The Void Pirates have withdrawn from sectors where humans are rumored to be operating. The savage clans are requesting peace negotiations for the first time in decades. Ambassador Ryu tried to process this information. You are saying that human military success has encouraged peaceful resolution of other conflicts? In a manner of speaking, yes. But the method concerns us. The mechanical unity representative spoke in its electronic voice. Ambassador, these conflicts are not ending through diplomacy or rational negotiation. They are ending through fear. Entire civilizations are surrendering rather than risk facing human soldiers. I see. Ambassador Ryu was beginning to understand the complexity of the situation. And you view this as problematic? We view it as unprecedented, the philosophical collective replied. Throughout galactic history, conflicts have been resolved through negotiation, technological superiority, or economic pressure. Never before has the mere reputation of a single species been sufficient to end wars. Ambassador Ryu leaned forward. What exactly are you asking of humanity? The room fell silent for a moment. Finally, the ethereal representative spoke. We want to hire humans not to fight, but to threaten to fight. Excuse me? The Nexus Rebellion has been disrupting trade routes for 8 months, the mechanical unity explained. Standard suppression efforts have failed. But if we could announce that human forces might be deployed, you want us to bluff? We want you to exist. The philosophical collective corrected. Your reputation is now a weapon more powerful than any technology we possess. The meeting continued for hours, with various species presenting increasingly desperate requests. Some wanted human soldiers for active combat, others wanted human advisors for tactical planning. A few wanted nothing more than public announcements that humans were considering involvement in their conflicts. Meanwhile, on the human colony world of New Busan, Colonel Lee found himself in the unexpected position of reviewing military contracts from across the galaxy. His small office had become an impromptu headquarters for what was rapidly becoming a very lucrative business. Commander Kwon Min-ho of the Earth Defense Corps had arrived to help coordinate the growing demand for human services. He sat across from Colonel Lee, both men staring at data pads filled with requests and offers. This is getting out of control, Commander Kwon said. The hegemony contract was supposed to be a simple mercenary assignment. Now we have offers from 37 different governments. Colonel Lee nodded. Some of these contracts are interesting. The Crystalline Empire is offering to share their energy technology in exchange for human protection. The gas giant collectives want us to train their military personnel. What about this one? Commander Quan held up a message pad. The savage clans are offering to end their raids permanently if we agree never to work against them. That might be the most cost-effective contract we have received. No work required, maximum strategic benefit. Both men laughed, but the humor was tinged with unease. The rapid escalation of human military reputation was creating opportunities they had never imagined, but also responsibilities they were not sure they wanted. "Sir," Commander Quan said more seriously, "some of these requests worry me. The Domination Front wants us to help them conquer 3 neighboring systems. The Purification Movement is asking for assistance with what they call cleansing operations." Colonel Lee's expression darkened. "Those contracts go in the rejection file. We fight wars, but we choose our wars carefully." "How do we choose? Every conflict has 2 sides, and both sides think they are right. We choose based on human values, Commander. We fight for freedom, justice, and protection of those who cannot protect themselves. We do not fight for conquest, oppression, or genocide." A communication alert interrupted their discussion. The screen showed an incoming message from General Vextar marked as urgent priority. "Colonel Lee," Vextar's voice carried clearly through the system, "I need to speak with you immediately about a development in the Outer Rim." "What kind of development, General?" "The Void Pirates have abandoned their main base and are retreating toward the Galactic Edge. They left a message saying they will not operate in any sector where humans might be present." Colonel Lee exchanged glances with Commander Quan. "General, we have no operations planned against the Void Pirates." "That is exactly my point, Colonel. They are fleeing from the possibility of facing human forces, not from any actual threat." The communication continued with Vextar explaining that similar patterns were emerging throughout the contested regions. Criminal organizations were abandoning profitable operations rather than risk human intervention. Rebel movements were disbanding or seeking peaceful solutions to their grievances. "Colonel," Vexatar concluded, "your people have fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy without firing a single shot in most of these cases." After the communication ended, Colonel Lee stood and walked to the window overlooking the training grounds, where human soldiers continued their daily exercises. They moved with the same efficiency and purpose that had made them so effective in combat, unaware that their reputation was reshaping galactic politics. "Commander," he said quietly, "I think we may have created a problem." "What kind of problem?" "We wanted to prove that humans deserve a place in galactic society. We succeeded, beyond our wildest expectations. But now other species are afraid of us rather than accepting us." Commander Quan joined him at the window. "Is that necessarily bad? Fear can be more effective than friendship in preventing conflicts." "Perhaps. But fear also breeds resentment, and resentment eventually leads to action against the source of that fear." Their conversation was interrupted by another urgent message, this one from Ambassador Ryu. Her face appeared on the communication screen, showing clear signs of stress. "Colonel Lee, I need to brief you on developments from my meetings with galactic representatives." Back in the Galactic Council chambers, General Vextar stood once again before the assembled representatives. But this time, the atmosphere was different. The earlier skepticism had been replaced by a tense silence, as beings who had witnessed the reports waited to hear his complete testimony. "Honored Council," Vextar began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, "I have told you about human military effectiveness. I have explained their tactical capabilities and strategic impact. But I have not yet told you The most important thing. He activated the holographic display, showing footage from the final battle. The images showed human soldiers moving across the battlefield, their faces clearly visible through helmet cameras and surveillance systems. Watch their expressions, Vextar said quietly. Look carefully at how they appear during combat. The council members leaned forward, studying the holographic figures. What they saw made many of them shift uncomfortably in their seats. Master Sergeant Oh Myung-hee appeared on screen, ducking behind cover as energy bolts flashed around her position. But instead of fear or grim determination, her face showed something that chilled the observers. She was laughing. Not the nervous laughter of someone trying to control fear, but genuine amusement, as if she was enjoying a challenging game. The next image showed Lieutenant Colonel Bae Soo-jin during a brief lull in the fighting. She was composing something in a small notebook while enemy fire continued around her. According to the file notes, she was writing poetry about the beauty of tactical victory. They enjoyed it, Vextar said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Every moment of combat, every tactical challenge, every victory. They enjoyed it all. Counselor Thyron's crystalline form flickered with disturbed patterns. General, surely this is just adrenaline response or psychological coping mechanisms. No, Counselor. I have studied human psychology extensively since these events. What you see is genuine pleasure derived from successful warfare. He changed the display to show statistical analysis. Human soldiers show elevated mood and increased energy levels during and immediately after combat operations. Their stress hormones spike during battle, but instead of causing anxiety, these chemicals seem to enhance their performance and emotional state. The mechanical unity representative processed this information through its analytical systems. General Vextar, are you suggesting that humans are biologically adapted to enjoy warfare? That is exactly what I am suggesting. Humans have evolved in an environment of continuous conflict. Natural selection has favored individuals who not only survive warfare, but thrive in it. Unit Prime's electronic voice carried a note of confusion. But this contradicts the fundamental principles of civilized development. Species naturally evolve beyond violent impulses as they develop advanced societies. Most species do, Vextar agreed. But humans apparently developed their advanced society through warfare, not despite it. They have technology because they needed better weapons. They have organization because they needed military structure. They have communication systems because they needed to coordinate battles. Ambassador Park Jin-woo finally spoke from his position in the human section. General Vextar, while I appreciate your analysis of human capabilities, I must point out that my people have served with honor under your command. We followed orders, achieved objectives, and conducted ourselves professionally. Yes, Ambassador, and that professionalism is precisely what terrifies me. The council chamber fell completely silent. You see, Vextar continued, if humans were simply savage creatures who killed without thought, they would be manageable. Savage beings make mistakes, act impulsively, can be predicted and countered. But humans are not savage. They are disciplined, intelligent, creative warriors who approach combat with the same methodical precision that other species apply to scientific research. He activated another display showing human training exercises. These recordings are from routine military drills on Earth. Watch how they practice. The images showed human soldiers engaged in combat simulations that were more complex and realistic than actual battles fought by most galactic species. They trained constantly, analyzing failures, improving techniques, studying the methods of historical warriors from their own past. They practice warfare the way other species practice art or music, Vextar explained, with dedication, passion, and continuous refinement of technique. Counselor Rethan of the Aquatic Worlds raised a webbed hand. General, even if this is all true, why should we ban human military involvement? They have proven to be effective. Allies. Vextar's eyes grew darker. Because they are too effective, Counselor. And because they are beginning to change the nature of warfare itself. He showed the Council recent intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Word of human capabilities has spread. Other species are now attempting to copy human methods. Military academies are revising their training programs. Weapon designers are creating equipment optimized for human-style tactics. This sounds like beneficial progress, noted the representative from the Ethereal Collective. Is it? Listen to these communications intercepts. Vextar played audio recordings of military commanders from various species discussing new approaches to warfare. The language they used was different from traditional galactic military terminology, more aggressive, more focused on psychological impact and total victory rather than limited tactical objectives. Humans are not just winning wars, Vextar explained. They are changing how other species think about war. They are making warfare more brutal, more efficient, more human. The Council began to understand the implications. If human methods spread throughout the galaxy, conflicts would become more devastating and decisive rather than the limited engagements that had been normal for centuries. But surely, Counselor Thyron argued, this will lead to faster resolution of conflicts and ultimately less suffering. Perhaps. Or it might lead to the complete destruction of civilizations that cannot adapt quickly enough to the new reality. Vexatar deactivated the displays and faced the Council directly. Honored representatives, I have fought beside and against hundreds of species throughout my career. I have studied warfare for longer than some of your civilizations have existed, but I have never encountered anything like humans. He paused, gathering his thoughts for his final argument. Humans do not fight wars the way we do. We fight wars to achieve political objectives, to gain resources, to resolve disputes. We view warfare as a tool, sometimes necessary but always regrettable. Humans fight wars because they are good at it, because warfare brings out their best qualities, creativity, cooperation, determination, sacrifice for common goals. For humans, war is not a tool. War is art, and victory is the highest form of artistic expression. The chamber was completely silent now. I ask you again to ban human involvement in galactic conflicts, not because they fail, but because they succeed too well, not because they are weak, but because they are too strong. Some weapons are too dangerous to use, even against one's enemies. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Representatives argued about military ethics, strategic balance, and the rights of species to offer their services to other governments. But underneath all the diplomatic language, everyone understood what was really being discussed, whether the galaxy could afford to have humans as active participants in warfare. Finally, the council speaker called for a formal vote. The resolution was simple: to classify humans as a Category X military asset, restricting their participation in galactic conflicts to preserve strategic balance. The vote was unanimous. Ambassador Park Jin-woo stood to address the council one final time. While we respect the decision of this body, I must note that Earth's government will consider this restriction as an infringement on our sovereign rights. Ambassador, the council speaker replied. This decision is not intended to limit human rights, but to protect the stability of galactic civilization. I understand the stated reasoning, Park said quietly, but you should understand that humans do not respond well to being told we cannot do something we are good at. The subtle threat in his words was not lost on anyone in the chamber. 3 days later, Colonel Lee Dong-soo received the official notification of the council's decision while reviewing reports at his temporary headquarters. Major Han Bo-young and Captain Song Yun-ji were with him when the message arrived. "Well," Colonel Lee said after reading the document, "it seems we have been too successful for our own good. What does this mean for our current contracts?" "Captain," Song asked, "all existing contracts are being terminated by order of the Galactic Council. We are to withdraw from all combat zones and return to Earth immediately." Major Han studied the restriction order. "Sir, this essentially bans us from participating in any galactic military operations." "Yes, it does." Colonel Lee's expression was thoughtful rather than angry. "The question is, what do we do about it?" "We could challenge the decision through diplomatic channels," Captain Song suggested. "We could," the colonel agreed. "But I suspect the council's mind is made up. They have seen what we can do, and they have decided it is too dangerous to allow." Major Han looked up from the documents. "Sir, what if they are right?" Back in the Galactic Council chambers, General Vexitar stood once again before the assembled representatives. But this time the atmosphere was different. The earlier skepticism had been replaced by a tense silence, as beings who had witnessed the reports waited to hear his complete testimony. "Honored Council," Vexitar began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I have told you about human military effectiveness. I have explained their tactical capabilities and strategic impact. But I have not yet told you the most important thing." He activated the holographic display, showing footage from the final battle. The images showed human soldiers moving across the battlefield, their faces clearly visible through helmet cameras and surveillance systems. "Watch their expressions," Vexitar said quietly. "Look carefully at how they appear during combat." The council members leaned forward, studying the holographic figures. What they saw made many of them shift uncomfortably in their seats. Master Sergeant Oh Myung-hee appeared on screen, ducking, behind cover as energy bolts flashed around her position. But instead of fear or grim determination, her face showed something that chilled the observers. She was laughing. Not the nervous laughter of someone trying to control fear, but genuine amusement, as if she was enjoying a challenging game. The next image showed Lieutenant Colonel Bae Soo-jin during a brief lull in the fighting. She was composing something in a small notebook while enemy fire continued around her. According to the file notes, she was writing poetry about the beauty of tactical victory. "They enjoyed it," Vexitar said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Every moment of combat, every tactical challenge, every victory. They enjoyed it all." Counselor Thyran's crystalline form flickered with disturbed patterns. "General, surely this is just adrenaline response or psychological coping mechanisms." "No, Counselor. I have studied human psychology extensively since these events. What you see is genuine pleasure derived from successful warfare." He changed the display to show statistical analysis. Human soldiers show elevated mood and increased energy levels during and immediately after combat operations. Their stress hormones spike during battle, but instead of causing anxiety, these chemicals seem to enhance their performance and emotional state. The mechanical unity representative processed this information through its analytical systems. General Vextar, are you suggesting that humans are biologically adapted to enjoy warfare? That is exactly what I am suggesting. Humans have evolved in an environment of continuous conflict. Natural selection has favored individuals who not only survive warfare, but thrive in it. Unit Prime's electronic voice carried a note of confusion. But this contradicts the fundamental principles of civilized development. Species naturally evolve beyond violent impulses as they develop advanced societies. Most species do, Vextar agreed. But humans apparently developed their advanced society through warfare, not despite it. They have technology because they needed better weapons. They have organization because they needed military structure. They have communication systems because they needed to coordinate battles. Ambassador Park Jin-woo finally spoke from his position in the human section. General Vexitar, while I appreciate your analysis of human capabilities, I must point out that my people have served with honor under your command. We followed orders, achieved objectives, and conducted ourselves professionally. Yes, Ambassador, and that professionalism is precisely what terrifies me. The council chamber fell completely silent. You see, Vextar continued, if humans were simply savage creatures who killed without thought, they would be manageable. Savage beings make mistakes, act impulsively, can be predicted and countered. But humans are not savage. They are disciplined, intelligent, creative warriors who approach combat with the same methodical precision that other species apply to scientific research. He activated another display showing human training exercises. These recordings are from routine military drills on Earth. Watch how they practice. The images showed human soldiers engaged in combat simulations that were more complex and realistic than actual battles fought by most galactic species. They trained constantly, analyzing failures, improving techniques, studying the methods of historical warriors from their own past. They practice warfare the way other species practice art or music, Vextar explained. With dedication, passion, and continuous refinement of technique. Counselor Reth-An of the Aquatic Worlds raised a webbed hand. General, even if this is all true, why should we ban human military involvement? They have proven to be effective allies. Vextar's eyes grew darker. Because they are too effective, Counselor, and because they are beginning to change the nature of warfare itself. He showed the Council recent intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Word of human capabilities has spread. Other species are now attempting to copy human methods. Military academies are revising their training programs. Weapon designers are creating equipment optimized for human-style tactics. This sounds like beneficial progress, noted the representative from the Ethereal Collective. Is it? Listen to these communications intercepts. Vexitar played audio recordings of military commanders from various species discussing new approaches to warfare. The language they used was different from traditional galactic military terminology, more aggressive, more focused on psychological impact and total victory rather than limited tactical objectives. Humans are not just winning wars, Vexitar explained. They are changing how other species think about war. They are making warfare more brutal, more efficient, more human. The Council began to understand the implications. If human methods spread throughout the galaxy, conflicts would become more devastating and decisive rather than the limited engagements that had been normal for centuries. But surely, Counselor Thyran argued, this will lead to faster resolution of conflicts and ultimately less suffering. Perhaps. or it might lead to the complete destruction of civilizations that cannot adapt quickly enough to the new reality. Vexitar deactivated the displays and faced the council directly. Honored representatives, I have fought beside and against hundreds of species throughout my career. I have studied warfare for longer than some of your civilizations have existed, but I have never encountered anything like humans. He paused, gathering his thoughts for his final argument. Humans do not fight wars the way we do. We fight wars to achieve political objectives, to gain resources, to resolve disputes. We view warfare as a tool, sometimes necessary but always regrettable. Humans fight wars because they are good at it, because warfare brings out their best qualities: creativity, cooperation, determination, sacrifice for common goals. For humans, war is not a tool. War is art, and victory is the highest form of artistic expression. The chamber was completely silent now. I ask you again to ban human involvement in galactic conflicts, not because they fail, but because they succeed too well. Not because they are weak, but because they are too strong. Some weapons are too dangerous to use, even against one's enemies. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Representatives argued about military ethics, strategic balance, and the rights of species to offer their services to other governments. But underneath all the diplomatic language, everyone understood what was really being discussed: whether the galaxy could afford to have humans as active participants in warfare. Finally, the council speaker called for a formal vote. The resolution was simple: to classify humans as a Category X military asset, restricting their participation in galactic conflicts to preserve strategic balance. The vote was unanimous. Ambassador Park Jin-woo stood to address the council one final time. While we respect the decision of this body, I must note that Earth's government will consider this restriction as an infringement on our sovereign rights. Ambassador, the council speaker replied, "This decision is not intended to limit human rights, but to protect the stability of galactic civilization." "I understand the stated reasoning," Park said quietly. "But you should understand that humans do not respond well to being told we cannot do something we are good at." The subtle threat in his words was not lost on anyone in the chamber. 3. Days later, Colonel Lee Dong-soo received the official notification of the council's decision while reviewing reports at his temporary headquarters. Major Hanbo Young and Captain Song Eunji were with him when the message arrived. "Well," Colonel Lee said after reading the document, "it seems we have been too successful for our own good." "What does this mean for our current contracts?" Captain Song asked. "All existing contracts are being terminated by order of the Galactic Council. We are to withdraw from all combat zones and return to Earth immediately." Major Han studied the restriction order. "Sir, this essentially bans us from participating in any galactic military operations." "Yes, it does." Colonel Lee's expression was thoughtful rather than angry. "The question is, what do we do about it?" "We could challenge the decision through diplomatic channels," Captain Song suggested. "We could," the colonel agreed. "But I suspect the council's mind is made up. They have seen what we can do, and they have decided it is too dangerous to allow